On this week's episode, we interview our nutrition coaches, Tracy and Becky, about nutrition in the Open, quarterfinals, and other competitions.
If you want to upgrade your coaching systems, head over to trainingthinktank.com/movement course. Scroll down to the bottom of the page where you'll be able to get the first section of the course for free.
It is nice when you walk in here and it smells like forest fir.
Yeah.
With essential oils, by the way.
Maybe that was like a Christmas on sale candle. I don't know.
Well, hello and welcome back, Becky and Tracy. How are you ladies?
Oh,
Good.
Crushing it.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here?
That's
Yeah.
right.
I thought you were going to say happy holidays. I was like, well, we're way past that.
Don't
get
get confused with
that.
the candle.
Well, there was yesterday. Yesterday was a holiday.
It's true. So we're getting closer and closer to the Open. And for those that have listened to our podcast, one of the themes this time of year is talking about Open performance, quarterfinals performance, and then eventually we'll talk about semifinals for those that make it. But nothing is, in my view, more important than recovery this time of year. Everyone's thinking about how hard to train and like what they need to touch, and they're going through all the analytics. If they're kind of like me, where their brain's always like, what movements do we need to touch? And they're going hard, but they're not thinking about the recovery. So after a couple of weeks of, let's say, Open prep, they're burnt out. They're like, what's going on? I feel terrible. I can't warm up well. I can't sleep well. I always feel like I don't have any energy halfway through the day. And a lot of that comes down to their nutrition. So we brought you guys back on to talk about that and how to prep for the Open.
Yeah. I think, it's never too late to start, even though we would prefer it that you start before now, but it's never too late to start. And they're just real simple, basic principles that everybody can apply, practice fueling before and recovering after, and even if you can, practice what time you'll do the workout, because some people have different schedules throughout the Open, and carbs are awesome, so just stock up on stuff that is easy for you to carry around and bring with you when you train, that kind of thing.
Yeah. The first thing you said, I think, will always be true. It's like you need to start earlier than later. But most people are procrastinators. Like we're naturally that. Like we're so focused on other tasks. And so we're a couple weeks out, let's say 4 weeks out from the Open, depending on when we actually release this. What are the things that the athlete can do now? Let's just say their nutrition has been bad all year round, but they're like, I need to dial it in. So at least now they're willing to dial in their nutrition and think about, how can I supplement my recovery by eating well? What are the tasks? What are the 3 or 4 things you would tell that athlete to do now?
Yeah. What do you got?
I would say first, make sure you're eating enough. So if you don't know how much you're eating, at least start tracking that, right? Figuring out.
Talking to that mic,
Sorry.
Tracy.
Sorry.
There you go.
It's a little high. So yeah, just figuring out how much you're actually eating first is important. So if you think without logging or tracking, you probably don't know. So
this
start
is
doing
so
that.
funny because I do this, right? I don't track often, but when I do, I realize how far off I can become. Like even if I know, like I used to eat oatmeal every single morning, and I would know what the serving size was. But then eventually I stopped actually tracking, and I just dump it in the bowl. It's like, that looks kind of like it. A couple weeks ago, I did that, and then I decided after I poured it into the bowl to measure it, and I was like over a cup and a half off. Like like literally, because
Under or over?
Over. Like I do like 2.5
That's
cups
the
in the morning. So I do a lot.
Yeah.
Increase,
Yes, and it just like kept getting bigger and bigger, and I couldn't believe how much more I was eating. Now it was fine. Like it is what it is. I'm not focused on performance right now, but it does matter in the grand scheme of things, because there's a certain way that I want to look, there's a certain way I want to feel, and all of a sudden those things get all skewed because I'm not actually measuring.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not that we want you to do that for the rest of your life, but it's just when things are important to you, you have to make everything tight, and you have to know what you're eating, and you have to know, how much water you're drinking and how much sleep you're getting. And it's for this time window, it's not for forever, because we also want to teach people how not to do all that kind of stuff. But when it's important to you, you have to do the things that show that it's important to you.
Right.
Especially when you don't have that baseline.
Yeah.
That too.
So would you recommend people, let's just say 4 weeks out from the Open, 7.5 weeks out from quarterfinals, to get a baseline at this point?
Yeah, for sure. Just to figure that out, because then also one of my favorite tips about Open fueling prep is to slowly start increasing carbohydrates. So I stole this tactic from Becky here, that like every 7 to 10 days, I'll have an athlete try to increase their calories by like 10 to 15 grams at a time. So it's not super overwhelming for them, but the time that the Open starts, they have like 50 to 70 extra grams of carbs that they just didn't have without really alternating too much of their body composition either, which is a really good place to be.
Yeah. So the athlete, they get a baseline, and then where do they go from there? Like, I don't feel very good. I feel like I'm getting a little run down after 3 weeks of hard training. Where are you starting them as far as like, what are we adjusting in their diet?
I think well, 3 weeks is probably still an amount of time where we can keep increasing. So it's just kind of like, we still got to get you more food. If I usually go by weight, that's kind of the thing that everybody has in their head. Oh, it can't go past this number. So, and it's a number that you can see, but there's so many other ways to measure progress, right? But it's just, we have to make sure that you have energy, that you're sleeping well, that you're not super hungry in the evening, but you wake up hungry. That's a good hormone production. And 3 weeks is just like a little drop in the bucket from how long we've been working with people and how much extra food we can get them to eat. So part of it is like, well, we're going to keep increasing food. That will help you. Part of it is, we'll keep an eye on what sessions during your week you feel kind of beat up, right? A lot of people do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they feel kind of run down. Oh, but Thursday's better because it's a rest day. And then Friday, Saturday, they're ready to crush it. Or every time I do this type of workout, I feel beat up, whether it's like a short, intense thing or a long or AMRAP. So it's start noticing those trends, and then we can try to get ahead of them. And also that helps. Oh, well, the open workout is like the ones that leave you feeling really beat up. So let's try to get ahead of that before you do that workout.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is you need to be a thoughtful athlete.
You do.
Yeah.
Weird, right?
Well, it's just really easy to go into the gym and like, okay, I have these things that my coach programs or that's on our online program. I'm going to crush it. But then a couple of days go by and everyone's going to feel a little run down on the third training day, when especially in the open time where there are a lot of hard workouts. If you're not taking notes and giving yourself feedback on what's hard, what's not hard, what days I feel better, what days I feel worse, it's really hard to track and then improve any of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, people will say, well, I can do my own nutrition. I'm like, I know you can, but we are the objective ones that hear what you're saying and have no prior thoughts about it. It's just like, oh, every Wednesday you feel like crap. Oh, I didn't even notice that. Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I think you want to make sorry, Chris. I was just going to say, so you want to figure out your baseline,
Sure.
And then every couple, like 1 to 2 weeks, try to increase overall food or just carbohydrates if that's what you're comfortable with. And you can do it that way, or on those days you beat up, you can also consider just auto-regulating on those days.
Okay.
So if like Tuesdays and Fridays freaking kill you, try to adding a little bit more food those days, and that can be like your overall increase.
What would that look like? Like, give me an example of a food that someone should eat during those days.
Definitely more carbohydrates.
Okay.
So you could go to anywhere from like 30 to maybe 45 or 50 extra grams that day.
And what time of the day would you recommend an athlete do that?
I don't know how Becky does it, but I definitely think keeping it around training can make you feel like you're finding new gears in your training because you got more fuel in the tank to get you to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I used to give advice for the open, we all do this, right? We send out our emails on Thursday, here's the workout. And I would send advice based on the type of CrossFit workout it was. So like a short, intense one, my thoughts were always, well, let's get you fueled before that. Your muscle glycogen is to the max. It's ready to be used for fuel. A longer AMRAP that's kind of more aerobic, you don't necessarily need all that pump in your muscles, but those are the ones that you might feel crappy afterwards. So maybe put the carbs after that to help promote recovery and get you ready for training the next day.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why is it that the carb is more important than maybe proteins or fats? Why would you tell an athlete to have a carbohydrate as opposed to the other two? Sorry, you're getting some
carbs.
alerts?
Carbs are energy. It's where it is. Yeah, that's easy to digest, especially if you do a baby food pouch, applesauce, bananas. You've seen me with my graham crackers, Teddy Grahams. Did I say applesauce? Just stuff that's easy.
Sure. You
don't really have to chew it, and your body can use it for energy right away.
Yeah. I also like the tip of thinking about the carbs you choose around training should be bland colored. So those tend to have less fiber intake as well, which will cause less GI issues. So if you keep them simple, easy digesting, graham crackers, pretzels, applesauce packets, things like that, you tend to not have as much of that feeling of an upset stomach before you get going.
Can you give me some examples of some things that maybe would cause the upset stomach, things that you see people eating in the gym?
Yeah, some certain fruits, carb. There's a lot of carbs in fruits,
Sure.
so that's a good one to lean on. But sometimes apples and oranges, or even some bananas, sometimes contain a little too much fiber, depending on the person, that it might bother them when they get going.
Yeah. So a lot of that still is probably athlete dependent.
Yeah.
Right? They need to they can try it, experiment, and that's another reason, Becky, to your point, that they should be trying this well before maybe not even the open, any performance-based thing that you do, any competition throughout the year, anything that matters to you, make sure you're practicing not only how you train, but how you eat before that so you're ready for the competition.
Yeah. And there's a ton of like local comps that people do that we can like experiment with to practice those things. But I also always tell people, why don't you use the throwdowns on Saturdays? Like you're competing with like a free leaderboard. Other people in our community might as well use that as a time to experiment if our protocols are going to work for you.
Yeah, for sure. So you get that baseline, you start increasing carbohydrates.
Hold on, can we pause you? Because I had a question about increasing the carbs.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I'm out there talking to people and they bring up nutrition, a lot of our people I've heard say over and over again is that they were shocked that you increased their carbs. And they were like super happy about it. Usually they're like, oh, and like they were, and it's drastic usually. Like you didn't just make them increase all at once, but they ended up getting way higher than they were. What is that like a epidemic out there that people are just way under eating carbs, or?
It's just they're under eating in general. We could increase fat. I think it doesn't really matter. But when you talk about CrossFit people, we do carbs because that's energy. But yeah.
But you see that a lot?
Like, all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot of external like sources out there that demonize certain food types. And there's this huge like message that's out there that carbs are like the enemy, And so when you give people a little bit and they see how much better they can feel, they're like, wow, maybe.
Well, that's the other crazy thing is they all increase and then they all still are like, looking ripped and
sometimes even more lean.
Yeah,
actually.
Exactly.
Yeah,
getting the hormones in line.
Yeah, I had this conversation with one of my clients I just checked in with today, and he's not high-level athlete. He's just general population, but it's the same for everybody. Nobody eats enough, and the only way that you can really tell is if you just start trying, right? Just start increasing food and see what happens, but people are scared to do that. So again, that's why I'm the objective person. I'm just going to do it. And he's up, probably 40 grams of carbs since we started, and his weight hasn't really changed, and he comments on it every time, like, I just can't believe this. And I'm like, it's not necessarily that, calories in and calories out doesn't matter anymore, but it's calories in increases, but then calories out also increases because you have more energy and you can move more and you can play with your kids and train harder, and then it all just negates itself, and it's still, you weigh the same.
Yeah. Tracy, you talked about like there are all these different voices out there, especially in the nutrition world, even in the training world too. I think just in performance in general, that are telling us all of these different things that we should try. So how do we know which way is right? Is it more just like the athletes have to explore? Are there certain principles that we should completely ignore? Like, where do you guys go and how do you handle that with your athletes?
I encourage definitely trial and error because, of course, it's not like super sexy, but it's always, I feel like the answer with a lot of nutrition questions is it depends because it's usually different per person. And I just feel like you need to try to find what works for you and really like lean towards people that you can trust in the space and what they have to say and that do their research and work well with you, because otherwise you could just be taking in a lot of stuff from people just trying to sell you things. And that can be really like, not everything I think that is shown on social media is like things that we need to be seeing either,
Right.
All that like misguided information. A lot of times it's for like a group target population, not specific for one person, but they see that and think that it's right for them.
Yeah, man, marketing is so powerful. I saw this new driver that just came out that was like
golf driver.
Oh yeah. And I just want it so bad because it just like the marketing scheme is amazing. So side note.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the more outrageous it is, the more attention you get, right? And I just like
Do you
to
feel
keep
like
it
overall
simple.
people are smarter these days though?
No.
No?
I
feel
think
like we're getting dumber than 10 years ago?
I think
Yes.
people want it to be easy, right? They
Yeah.
want whatever person is going to say, oh,
What's
do
the big
this,
fad right now?
do this
that
and you'll
people
look
are
this
like
way.
falling
Oh.
prey to or
I don't know.
into?
It's always like recycles,
Intermittent fasting.
right?
Yeah,
Intermittent
keto.
I feel like that's
fasting.
pretty big.
Yeah.
They're
Carnivore.
here and there,
But
and
there's nothing necessarily wrong with any of those. It's just they're like going too hard into them or
I think
wrong
that
timing or
I don't know. I think that it's not like there's no secret and there's no easy way to do it. And the way that people get on these trends is, oh, intermittent fasting, you can lose weight faster, or keto, you can lose weight faster. And it's not that simple. It's just you got to put in the work. You can get results at anything that you do, right? Anything that you can do, you can get results. But the way that we coach is how are you going to be able to live your life?
Sustain it.
Yeah, right? How are you going to be able to do this for forever? And it's just hard work and just stick to the basics and be patient.
Yeah.
And not everybody's like that.
This is a small sample size, but I don't think I've worked with anybody that has intermittent fasted and performed better after a training cycle. That's just like, and it's not many, maybe 10 to 15. I've done it myself. I think I talked about this on a podcast before, but I did a 20-minute watt test, and I went through a training cycle where I was fasted every single time, 12 weeks, retested, and I improved, but it was like by 3%. I came back probably 6 months later, did the same thing, and ate what I would usually eat before a training session. I improved by like 18%. Like it was drastic. And a lot of that too was just the feel. I felt better when I woke up. I felt better when I went to sleep. I had energy throughout the day. Whereas when I was training hard in the mornings fasted, I felt like trash the rest
here's
of the
the
day.
trap with that is, and I think I mentioned this once on a podcast too, but I'll repeat it, is that I went to intermittent fasting in the morning because that's just how I'd rather just wake up and not eat. I don't want to eat.
Yeah.
So it was perfect for me. It's like, oh, I'll do this. And then when I trained, I didn't feel like I had a lack of energy. Not at all. And I even told people like, no, I feel great. And I did feel great until I went back to eating again. And then I trained and I was like, oh, I was missing a gear.
Yeah.
But I never felt like I was lacking energy. But it was when I had it back in, I was like, oh yeah, there's more gears here that I was missing.
Our bodies are so good at adapting to a new baseline. So
Yeah.
I think that's important. You know, you guys already talked about that, but finding your baseline and then let's continue to adjust to find how to maximize your performance.
Yeah. I'm like, how much can you eat and still have these things that are important to you be where you want them to be? And sleep, energy, training performance, everything is so much better when you eat more. Yeah.
So let's dive back into that. You talked about the baseline. We're slowly adding carbs because you guys think that it's going to add some, hopefully we add some more energy throughout the day. We give their muscles more energy to be able to do the things they want to do for performance. What do we do in the actual training weeks where we're leading up to something that matters for performance? Are we adjusting anything as far as like, are you adding supplements? Are you, maybe adding even more carbs in the day of performance? Or are you doing all that beforehand?
I think in our ideal world, everybody would be where they want to be right now. You know, you get through the holidays, right? The holidays are messy, but we have worked with everybody. It's like December, you are fueled, ready, you know how you like to eat throughout the day, you know where you like to put your carbs around training, like you're ready to go. And then it's just kind of little tweaks here and there. But that's more as far as what does training look like and how does it change as we get into the open. And that's why with our individual coaching clients within Train Think Tank, Tracy and I, we sent out those sheets to you guys, to the coaches, so that you can tell us, all right, well, what is their training going to look like in January, February, March, so that we can get ahead of it and talk to the athletes about it. So that is where, okay, well, when is training volume going to increase? Are you one of those people that when training volume increases, you start to feel really bad really quick, so let's try to add food more? Or do you handle it a little bit better? Let's just kind of see how it goes as the weeks go on.
Yeah. So to give the audience some background, I think this was actually, it's such a great idea on your end to do this, but you're then getting another, hopefully, objective source as opposed to asking the athlete how they feel. So Becky or Tracy, they reached out to me, the athletes that you guys work with that are under my training program, and then I basically filled out this form that said exactly how much training volume they had, how they feel, what things they're working on, where the volume's going to go, per Becky's, what you just said, over the next couple of months, and the things that we're trying to target, like what are your performance goals in the open, quarterfinals, for those that make semifinals, so on and so forth. But then that gives you an objective source instead of asking the athlete, well, how do you feel? Because sometimes the athlete is like, oh, I feel okay, even though they feel messed up. Like I can be like, no, Wednesdays are a hard training day for so-and-so, and so we probably need to up this, or at least I give that information to Becky and Tracy, and that allows you guys to handle it.
Yeah. So we get food up to an appropriate level, which is different for everybody, but usually appropriate is more than what they're used to eating. And then we kind of go by how training is going to change depending on whether the open is what's important or quarterfinals or semifinals.
Yeah. So what about this is something that gets asked in the compete water cooler all the time. They have their normal training weeks, and then the open comes or quarterfinals come. And now everything's thrown off because they're going, instead of training at 9 a.m. like they normally do, or 7 a.m., they're doing Friday night lights. And now they're like, what do I do with my eating schedule? Because usually I eat at 5 a.m. and I go in at 7 a.m. I train, do my normal thing. Or the same thing with quarterfinals, where now they have to do 4 or 5, maybe even 6 workouts over the weekend. How do you tell your athletes to handle that as opposed to just a normal training day where maybe they're only going in for an hour and a half?
Yeah, what do you got?
So I have a couple of things. First, I would hope if we've had some time together, we've practiced this already. Like if we've done a local comp where there's 3 events in a day, then at least you know what that feels like. And I've already written you out a competition like sheet of how to handle your food, and we adjust it based on the times of quarterfinals and when you're going to do your attempts. As for like the open, I think it's dependent on the priority for the athlete for sure, but something I'll do too is like a lot of times usually at the beginning of the week is kind of heavy or like something like sprinty and short, and then it kind of tapers off until their attempt on maybe Thursday or Friday, right? So I'll make sure that Wednesday or Thursday that they have a little bit more extra fuel the day before, the day of, and then it depends on if they're retesting too or not. So if they're not retesting, we might be able to just be okay and go back to your normal macros the next day, or we might have to add a little extra in to make sure you're not super wrecked starting off your next week of training. But if you're like one and done, we can probably keep moving. If you have to retest, we might have more fuel and make sure that you have enough fuel in the tank to do that retest.
So would you recommend someone practice training later in the evening leading up to the open to make sure they get a feel for that? And as far as they're like adding in more carbs during the evening as opposed to in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, that might just be more of get a feel for how you're going to feel. I think of those people that train in the morning and then they have to do like Friday night lights at their gym, and that just sounds awful to me because that's like my bedtime, right? But I don't think they necessarily need to change their whole life schedule around. It's just you can't eat at 6 and then go do a workout. You have to basically plan your day backwards almost. And okay, we know that Friday night lights, I'm going to start warming up at 5, so I should probably be done eating by 3 or so. And well, now that means lunch is here. Like just kind of work backwards to make sure that you get all the food for your day. It's just got to be moved around a little bit.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. When would you say should the window be for when they get most of their food in before a workout? And then, let's start there, and then we'll talk about coffee and caffeine and all the other stuff.
Let's make this really tangible. All right, so it's 23.1, and we've decided we're going to do it at Friday at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Hit it.
Yeah, I mean, so
I would make sure your meal, like your last meal before you eat, is like done before, like 2.5 hours before your attempt. So if you don't want to have any like big meals within that window, then I don't know how you like to do it, Becky, but I think between 30 to 60 minutes out from your attempt, you could probably add in some of those soft carbs that you don't really have to chew, or maybe even a liquid carb to just give you
like a waffle.
Yeah, like an egg waffle.
Yes,
put it in the blender.
What do most people here? They have those. What does Alexis have all the time? The
applesauce or the Go-Gurts and stuff like that.
Fruit snacks are another good one.
I've
talked about that before. Yeah, no, you want to make sure everything's digested. So if you can go a little bit longer, that's fine. But it's just most people kind of have a feel for like, I ate too soon.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it depends on the type of workout, like Becky said too, the duration and the type of workout. Like if it's just a lift, you could probably get away with I like to have like a big meal before a lift because I feel like I'm like heavier. But if it's like a 20-minute AMRAP, I definitely don't want that.
You don't want the steak and potatoes.
That's why like quarterfinals are so different from the open, because I feel like the open, I don't know. I mean, we can never predict it, but it's kind of been like shifting towards easily accessible. It's not super heavy. It's not even super highly technical from a gymnastic standpoint anymore. It's more like you're going to work hard for 10 to 20 minutes, and that's what it is. But then quarterfinals, you kind of equate that to a weekend competition, where you have 2 events in a day or 3 events in a day, and then you have to space food out. And what should you eat? Like Tracy said, before a lift, you eat as you're walking up to the bar. But if it's something else, then you got to think about it.
Well, let's talk about quarterfinals then, because that's where most people are aspiring to get to. Let's say you have to do 2 or 3 workouts in a day. And now the whole training day for most people is skewed, because most people are training 90 minutes a day, maybe 2 hours, and that's it, right? Now I have to do one in the morning, and then I have until noon to do the next one, and I have to do one at 3 p.m. How do you handle that? Because there is no time to digest real food, or at least not for me. Like I wouldn't be able to do that. So what are you guys recommending?
I mean, I usually tell people don't worry about tracking those days.
Yeah,
because it's impossible. And you need to just have a big old bag of applesauce, protein shakes. And usually you can control breakfast, eat like normal food for breakfast, and then you can control dinner. But in the middle is going to be just all that snacky stuff and like liquid stuff, I would say. But then
I like the idea of keeping breakfast relatively the same because you might be also a little more like anxious. So don't stress about like not finishing breakfast. Like the extra food you got the night before will help you that day, especially in the morning. I know a lot of people get nervous and just are in their head and they don't know how it's going to go or whatever. But then also at night, like Becky said, you can control your dinner. And I think you need to do a lot of work at dinner that night, because if you're going to come back and do 2 to 3 more workouts the next day, and you're going to be sore because your intensity is way higher.
Did you just say you got to do a lot of work at dinner?
I'm going to work, baby.
Put in that work.
That's work.
Yeah, a lot
Chris
of
and I
work.
can do that.
You gotta eat it.
So is that a thing? Should I make sure that I'm, people always say this, carb loading the night before a big event?
I don't know if I would call it carb loading. Sometimes I like to do refeeds. Or,
I think a refeed is
that's what we call it. And refeed
What
is
is that?
such a broad term, but it just means eat more carbs than what you normally do.
Yeah, well, hold on. You just rolled your eyes at carb loading. But then
Well, carb loading, that's like a
no, I know.
thing,
There's like
and there's like a
system for it.
protocol.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
I think about that's like carb cycling, and we're not like
Okay.
really talking about that.
Just
Sure.
eat some more food.
Food vocab matters.
Yeah, no.
All right, let's just say the competition starts on Friday. The workouts come out Wednesday or Thursday, so you know exactly what you're doing the next day. Thursday night, how many more carbohydrates should I have as opposed to a normal day?
It's so broad. It could be like 50 to 100.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's really dependent too. I think on like the athlete and what stage they're looking to.
Can you guys give the audience an idea of what 50 grams of carbs would look like on a plate? Like get just a couple of
I guess
with
it
oatmeal,
depends,
with fruit, like some other options.
Well, like
too.
white rice is like a handful, right?
Okay.
But broccoli is like
yeah, don't do the broccoli.
no.
I tried that.
Two applesauce pouches are around 40.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And my fruit snack bags, 2 fruit snack bags is probably around 30.
Like the kind they'd pass out for Halloween.
Yeah, like I steal them from my kids, Welch's fruit snacks. So you could probably have like
those are good.
3 fruit snack bags or 2 applesauce pouches.
I also love wheat thins. I'm like hooked on those.
Oh,
Just crackers,
yeah,
are
they are
easy.
good. Okay,
Yeah.
how many of those can I have for 50
16
grams?
gives you like 30, I think.
Oh
if you
man,
get-
so that would feel like way more.
Yeah.
I should definitely do those.
Yep.
Hey, you guys talk about no one eats enough. I'm like, man, I could like easily eat that. That's no problem. What are you
Yeah,
talking
I'm not
about?
in that category.
Exactly. Yeah. How many carbs are in 6 waffles or pancakes? Because that's about what I would do.
Oh
the
man,
night
that's
before.
like 200.
yeah, you're doing well.
Yeah, okay. I'm
That,
crushing it.
Brandon.
That's why I always feel so good. You're gonna see me coming in with a smile the next day. All right, so someone gets 50 to 100 grams of carbohydrates. What else? Are there other things that you would recommend the night before big competition?
I don't know. Well, the open and quarterfinals, everybody just their heads are all over.
Sure.
I talk to people and I say, you guys do harder training and compete on a Tuesday, but you're going to be in a mess for the open on a Saturday. You know what I mean?
All psychological.
Man,
Yeah.
people get so
so
crazy, and they
crazy.
think they don't, and they think they're all calm and collect and cool, and it's
No.
like, you are not the same person you were last year.
No, so
We all do with the things that we care about, though.
I
Yeah,
think
but at least admit that you're crazy. Don't tell me that you're normal right
Just
now,
own
because
it,
you
right?
ain't normal.
right. I think being objective, like this is very important to me. Trying to get your head right too, because we can only do so much with food.
Yeah, right.
At some point, it's like it's just your brain.
I get that. All right, then let's get to the caffeine, because this is something that everyone, I would see most people in the gym are either drinking coffee in the morning or they're using some kind of pre-workout. I actually saw someone do a pre-workout before Metcon the other day that I thought was crazy because it was a long one. But what do you guys recommend? Like, is that something that you would use as a supplement to help with performance? Or are you telling people to stay away from coffee or caffeine in general?
That's like my favorite thing for pre-workout.
Okay.
I don't think you need to buy things. I think coffee is fine.
Okay.
I was thinking, again, go back to those Friday night lights people. Do we tell them to keep drinking their coffee at 5 p.m.? But I'm one of those
Ooh.
people that I could do that. I
No,
could drink
thank you.
coffee. I could drink it
can
whenever
too,
and
yeah.
I can fall asleep. So I guess it depends on how you can metabolize it. But I am not a like coffee is bad kind of person.
Yeah, same. I actually use black coffee as well. So I'm not like a huge fan of like the supplements of pre-workout, just because usually it also has like 3 other things in it. And I'm just like, this is a mess. What's actually in there? But I like natural like coffee. And I think it's important like for you to practice with that as well ahead of time.
Hell
like,
yeah,
you know,
because
Well, yeah.
I've been practicing.
pre-wad poos.
Yeah.
you got to make sure
You're
you time
already
it
nervous.
right, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like you want to still like get good sleep. And then I also think there's some people that already have enough like anxiety about their performance, that maybe the coffee won't make them feel better. It could actually make them feel a little worse. So practicing on those throwdown days or some other competition day would be worth experimenting with beforehand, and not just trying something new the day of game day.
Yeah. I love that you keep bringing up the throwdown. And that's why we started that. Is not just for nutrition, but for everything. Practice your recovery, your warm-ups, your cool-downs, your pacing plans in training. Practice the things that you're not good at. On the emotional side, practice the workouts that you know you're going to get beat by half of your peer group. Those are the things that you have to learn to overcome and then prep for so that you can do well in competition.
That is the answer, because the whole time I'm listening to all this, I'm thinking of someone who's super nervous about all this, and they're trying to write their notes, and they're like, I'm going to do all these things, and they're just going to fucking panic. It's like, you got to practice your reps,
Often. And I feel like you guys do a good job in compete with all of that and having different variety of training sessions. And when I talk to athletes that are in compete, I try to bring that stuff up. Like, you have to know how you feel after these kinds of workouts, and you have to know what's going to be hard and where you can slow down and where you can go fast, and then we plan nutrition appropriately.
Yeah.
And why not practice like everything though at the same time? So you're practicing your nutrition protocols. Why don't you practice where you're going to like set up your equipment for the fastest transitions, where you're going to set up your camera? Can your buddy judge you for a workout here and there just to get used to like a no rep here and there, or whatever that looks like? I feel like now is the time to dial it in. You don't have to do that all year, but why not do it a couple weeks out?
Everyone else is practicing the actual sport that they play. Like when I played football, we were doing full speed scrimmages because you have to practice that. And if you don't, then you're not going to do well on game day. And everyone thinks that we're practicing it by just doing CrossFit workouts, but it's totally different when the camera's on and the judge is judging you.
That's right.
And the pressure and
you
all
care.
that. Yeah. Well, that also is huge.
Well, and competing is so different than training, right?
Yes.
So like we can train all day, but if you're not used to throwing yourself in the fire, it's going to be quite
that
warm.
that almost requires that you actually have to put your name on that leaderboard. I think if you really want to be doing it right, you could go through all those motions, but if you're not putting your name on there, then you're not going to have that extra level of caring that might be required.
Yeah. If you're doing it for performance, if you want to improve, then I think that you should. And I've had that conversation with people both in compete or individual clients and I understand this, they're worried about people judging them, or they don't want to see their name lower than they think that they actually are. But to Chris's point, I think that that's part of the process of overcoming that and realizing what you need to work on so that you can improve those things.
Yeah, and it's funny because I guarantee those other people don't care where that person is. You
know,
right.
100%.
They just care where their name is, and everybody gets wrapped up in
Travis is at the
what are
bottom,
they gonna think?
then we'll all celebrate.
Yeah. But it's like everybody's all in their own head. They don't care what you're doing, which, sorry if that hurts your ego, but
but it's a real thing.
It is. All right, so what about other supplements? Because this is another question that comes up all of the time. Let's talk about like kind of the big ones, like creatine or beta-alanine or sodium bicarbonate. Those are all things that, maybe if you've been in the classroom, you've heard Kyle Ruth talk about. Are those things that you would recommend or play with for athletes, or just leave it alone?
I don't know. I feel like creatine it's the most widely researched, and I'll say safest.
Can y'all hear those barbells through your headphones?
Yes.
It is raining barbells.
They're crushing it out there.
They are they're doing a compete workout right now with barbell cycling.
It's literally what are they doing? What's the workout?
So they're doing the elite version, which is going to be a little bit different than RX and intermediate and masters. But basically, you have a buy in each round. They're going to do GHDs, and they're doing, I think, box jump overs.
What's the shit that's happening right here?
Well, so
listen. The
and then it's like in the remaining time.
The remaining time, they have to do AMRAP power snatches, and then the next set, remaining time, AMRAP power clean and jerk. So it's just bang, bang, bang the whole time.
Man, it was war out there. Sorry, you were talking about creatine.
I think that's the one that most people turn to, and I feel like there's not side effects. The one thing that I always talk to people about is the way that it works is it like pools in water to your muscles, so your weight's going to go up. So if you're one of those people that is worried about your weight going up, it's the creatine.
Sure.
Just be objective about that. But I really feel like other supplements, less is better. I just would rather, if it's a vitamin or mineral, just try to eat a little bit differently than you do. And I know that a lot of people want to get that extra like 1% better, but I feel like lifestyle stuff and recovering and sleeping more and that kind of thing
Such a bigger bang for your buck.
Is way more important than any of that other stuff.
And I think if you want to try that other stuff, it's okay. Like I think picking high quality options is good. And also, again, experimenting. So if you are going to try it, let's like try it for 4 to 6 weeks, give it a valid honest shot. Did you feel an improvement? Did you not? Okay, no, maybe we don't need to waste your money, or maybe we can keep it if it's making you feel better. Even if it's like a mental thing, I'm like, whatever, as long as it's, safe.
And like look at the ingredients, because I had an athlete who had really bad digestive problems, and you look at all the supplements, it's this big list of all the stuff she was taking, and a lot of them had the same thing in it. So you're just getting,
too much.
Way over your recommended daily allowance for some of these things.
I've seen
so
that.
just keep an eye on that stuff.
And then you're
too.
just wasting your money at that point.
Yeah.
So
what about just like a multivitamin, or, like athletic greens or others like that are like pretty big on the market right now, especially in the CrossFit space, where it's just like a little, I'm drinking this to get all my multivitamins. Would you rather someone just do that with their food, or is it okay to supplement with that?
Food.
I feel like
1, 2, 3 food.
that's like the first thing I try to get off people's list if they
Sure.
come to me already taking it. I'm like, let's save your money. Let's focus
Hell
on
yeah,
your
especially
food
if you're getting
quality.
those athletic greens. Oh my God.
Right? They're
It's
so
like
expensive.
$100 for nothing.
Well, it's
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Any supplement now is so expensive.
Yeah. And I think the only time I feel like that it's really helpful is if you're like traveling, right? And maybe you only have like an Airbnb and you don't have that much food. Like having a greens might be nice just to make sure you like keep your immunity high or whatever, but I don't think on a day-to-day basis it's necessary. I'd rather you get it from your food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Any supplement, I tell them, if you feel like it helps, then keep using it. But if you feel like it doesn't, then save your money. The placebo effect is very real, and
For
there
sure.
are some things that people need, and I say, okay, fine. Like, you do your research. I have no thoughts, yes or no, if it's not harmful, and you just keep on going. But I feel like in general, less is more when it comes to that.
What about for the person that doesn't eat well, that you're trying to get them enough nutrients, micronutrients? Would you recommend that in that case, or are you just like, hey, look, you got to change your diet completely to make sure you're getting these things in?
Yeah, it's like baby steps, though.
Yeah, way slower approach.
Okay.
I feel like you'd probably try to increase their food slowly. Like the only time I've really recommended more supplements for someone is if I had to put them in like an extreme deficit for some reason, where I know they're just like not getting their needs met from real whole food, because maybe they're consuming like 1,400 calories. But in my case, that's a really rare client.
I would die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and it's like, I know vegetables don't taste good, but everybody that we work with are grown adults, and you
It's time.
you
Man,
do
I
things
feel
that you
like
don't
they
want
do
to
taste
do.
good.
Well, yeah,
I love
good.
vegetables.
So yeah, we try to. I tell them just pick like one thing, right? And
Yeah.
if you don't like to cook it, there's tons of freezer bag options of vegetables that you just stick in the microwave and
Make them taste
let's
better.
go. Like
Yeah.
it's time to grow up now.
Yeah, and don't freak out about, like, I think I might have talked about this before. Sometimes we freak out like, well, I'm buying frozen instead of fresh. I'm happy you're buying it. Just put it in the car and cook
Yeah.
it, you know?
Baby steps, like you said,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's pull back, because I know I asked you about, like, let's say a competition day or the quarterfinals where it's a whole weekend, but just in general, as someone steps into the gym and they say, I want to change my nutrition, but I want to kind of figure out timing around my training and work schedule and all of that, what would you recommend just for the average gym goer that does still want to compete? They have 90 minutes of a training session in the morning, they go to their work. How should they handle their food throughout the day? So in other words, like, let's just say you have these target macros or calories that you want them to get in. Should they load it up at certain times? Like, does timing really matter? Should it be around their training, or should we just make sure that we get it in throughout the day?
Yeah, I mean, probably carbs around training just for energy purposes. And then I always try to have them spread protein out like throughout the day, just because you don't want to eat like a ton of chicken
At the end of the
one
night.
point.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
And usually fat kind of far away from training, just because
Okay.
it slows your digestion down. But for the most part, I don't think it needs to be super complicated. I think if you want to eat this at this time, okay, let's do it. For them, it's more like planning ahead.
Yeah,
you know?
and maybe not for athletes, but for more like the Gen Pop clients I have, I tend to see very little breakfast, barely an existent lunch, and then a nice big dinner. And so I usually try to help people like front load their food a little bit more, or at least just evenly distribute it to your meals throughout the
Sure.
day. And then, like Becky said, definitely keeping carbs around your training will just help you have different gears there and recover better.
Does it matter if I have 5 or 6 meals, smaller meals throughout the day, or should it be 3 meals? Should I snack more often? Like, what would you recommend for an athlete that's trying to perform?
I don't think it matters.
I think it's very dependent on the
Yeah.
person.
And like if you have a lot of calories to eat, it's probably hard to do that in 3 meals.
Yeah.
And if you're training hard and you're in the gym a lot.
Right.
So kind of like get it in how you can almost.
Yeah. And it depends on if the person already has like pre-existing conditions. So if they take like an ADHD medicine or they have hypothyroidism, they might need to take smaller meals a day.
Sure.
So we take all that into account.
Okay.
When we think about those things.
Yeah. I'm very laid back. I feel like it's not necessarily, it has to be this
It's
way.
right?
Not
the same for everybody.
What do you want to do? Okay, here are some ways to do it, because usually we just present solutions that people have never thought of before.
Yeah, I try not to even recommend a change unless they bring it up.
Okay.
Because then I'm giving unsolicited advice at that point.
Well, that's what I wanted to finish with, is kind of what the process is if someone does sign up with you. So, Becky, Tracy, I call you and I want nutrition advice. I actually just connected you with a client. Like, what is that process like? How does the consult work? And then after that, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, we schedule a consult. That consult, we go through a questionnaire and a food log. And that consult is on its own. If that person feels like we have given them enough information, like, go ahead, you can do it on your own if you want to. And then if they want to work with us, we have just a couple different price point tier options as far as how much connection we have throughout the week and whether we do phone call check-ins or email check-ins. I have a lot of people who are used to tracking, they're used to weighing and measuring. At the start, it's very straightforward. Let's eat more food. So it's kind of simple so that they feel like they don't need as much access. But now as we get into the open, some people want more back and forth. So then, you rotate through the tiers as you want to. But the whole process is very client driven, and it's what they want and what they want to improve on. And then I just give them suggestions. All right, well, this is how we can do it. We try to meet them where they're at instead of like go all the way to the one end. We might want them over here, but we're not going to shove them over there to start. It's just little baby steps to get them where we want them to be.
Yeah. We can't change their whole structure tomorrow, because that's what all those other programs do, and they last for like 30 days and then they come see us anyways.
Yeah.
So we try to make those little changes over time. And I feel like it's, like she said, very client driven. So like what we're doing for one person is probably not the same for anybody else. We try to figure out what's best for them to get them to wherever they need to be.
So let's play a game to finish.
Oh boy.
The client that you've given the most carbohydrates to in a day, what's that number for both of you?
Oh, shoot.
Well, it's a girl, and it's 400.
You don't mean you increased in one
No,
time.
this is where
like
we
what
got
are the total
and
number.
I can say it's Meg, but she's at 540 grams of carbs, and I'm pretty sure when we started, she was at like 250.
Yeah. So, the reason I ask this is because people will freak out. Chris, you brought this up of like, I can't believe I'm raising my carbs, but I'm like, people are eating like 150 grams a day, and then they get up to 400 or 500, and they can't believe they're not like getting
How long
fat
did
or something.
she went from what to what?
It was under 300.
Yeah, I would say it was 250.
She was over 540.
And how long did that take?
Probably
to
about
get
a
up?
year.
So
year and a
built her
half.
up over
And then
a
I
year.
have one of Mike's
She
guys.
is still super strong and super lean.
Yeah.
What did y'all notice,
Nothing's
Brandon?
changed.
What did you notice after she started increasing the carbs?
Yeah, I mean, better energy and better strength metrics, and just
because you coach her. If we didn't say that,
Yeah, I think in general too, with anybody that I've noticed that is either worked with one of these ladies or someone else that knows what they're doing, and they slowly raise their carbs, is just in general better mood and better energy going into their sessions, which then leads to better training. Faster adaptations and better strength metrics, all of those things.
Yeah, one of Mike's clients, Tristan, he's over in France. He's coming here for the camp. He's up into like the upper 500 and still crushing it. And like, I can eat more. And this is the best, is when you have the thoughtful clients and they realize that they need more food because they feel a little bit beat up. So he kind of regulates it himself almost as we go. So yeah, he's up into like the upper 500s. But Meg is like the winner.
That's more than double. We're going to double your carbohydrates today.
Yeah, no big deal. I would say, I think for females, like 450. I don't think I've hit a 500 for a female besides myself at one point.
Yeah, you can put it away. You have a lot, Tracy. Yeah.
But for guys, I've definitely had them in the 500s before.
Yeah. And what about the lowest that someone has come to you and said, these are my numbers right now? What's the lowest you've seen? You don't have to say their names, but just in general.
I have guys that are at 150 carbs and low protein. Yeah. That 2,000 calorie milestone, I think, for a lot of people, we've like reached it, and I'm like, look,
You
at
did
you,
it! Yes.
2,000 calories.
It's such a big
Why do you
deal.
think that is? Why is that? Like, I know that for so long we've been said like this is based off a 2,000 calorie diet or whatever. Is that why people are trying to follow that or stay under that so that they can quote unquote lose weight? Because I've heard that, not necessarily in the performance space, but just in general, when you listen to people say like, oh, I'm going on a diet and I want to cut from 2,000 to 1,800. It's like, where did that 2,000 number come from?
Oh, I don't know where the 2,000 came from, but the low number that people live at came from, well, I have to eat less to lose weight, and then I have to eat less more to lose more, and they never try to get out of that. You know, it's like at some point you hit like 1,200 and nothing happens.
Dudes will go to 1,200?
I don't know if I've had a guy at 1,200, but
I've definitely had females come to me
at
that or lower.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, there's a lot of people that are considered overweight that are eating way under eating what they should be.
Yeah.
1,200. I have midday farts that are 1,200 calories.
That's what I say. I'm like, my 10-year-old eats more than you, and you're a grown adult, so we need to fix this.
And I think both of you have said this well, but that is just it's such a drastic change for people that it's not just like the change in eating, but emotionally how to handle eating more and feeling like if someone is overweight and now you're saying, well, actually, we're going to eat more. It's probably really challenging for someone because they're telling you like, Tracy, I want to lose weight. I don't want to gain weight. Now you're adding more of these things into my diet. I'm scared of that, but it's overcoming that process.
Right.
Yeah. That's the hard part.
And I'm like, okay, well, if we don't do this, then I have to cut you from the 1,100 calories you're at to do a deficit. And do you think that that's sustainable?
No. It's like you have to constantly remind them too. Like, this is what we're doing. It's for the long term. In the short term, we're increasing food and maybe nothing changes, but that's hard. And you're still doing the work and you're getting yourself in a good place to do it better.
And I bet you'll feel a lot better though than you did before with other metrics like that: sleep, energy, digestion, hunger, all that stuff.
So I have a couple more questions for you real quick before we finish. The one that I've heard a lot lately is the no seed oils or no processed food, no processed sugars. Like that those are big pushes. And I think those are all probably really worthy things to be in the market. Like, hey, let's get away from a lot of these processed things. How do you differentiate that between someone that's trying to eat to perform, like they just need the calories, versus someone that's trying to be really healthy?
I feel like you will be good with that because you're the quality. You always talk about
quality queen.
Yeah.
That's a good.
I
just actually was featured on Presley Hirsch's article from Morning Chalk Up about processed versus non-processed foods. And I definitely think athletes might have a little more wiggle room to get away with, mainly because their calorie intake is so much more higher than a Gen Pop person. So then you just think about like, I'm sorry, it's going to be really hard and probably uncomfortable to get all your calories from as clean food as possible.
I've found that in the past.
Yeah, me too. And it just like wrecks your digestion, right? And when you have to train 2 or 3 times a day, you can't be miserable in the bathroom, right? So I feel like adding a little bit of that in and just keeping like a healthy balance with that is important. But I think also talking about the quality of, you can still find like very calorie dense options for food that are high quality.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think, there's studies that come out all the time and like, red meat is bad. And I just saw the one that said Lucky Charms are more healthful than
that was government. That was government funded.
There's all these studies that come out, and then you can interpret the studies however you want to. And most people won't actually read the study; they'll just read what whoever posts on Instagram. Right? Social media is awesome and horrible all at the same time. But I think you just have to be objective, right? And just be like, okay, this stuff is bad and good. Like everything is good and everything is bad. It just depends on how much and when and, the amounts that you eat. So if you're just kind of, well, what do I feel good when I eat? And it's usually meat and like fruits and vegetables, healthy. I hate the word healthy, but that kind of food, that usually makes you feel the best. So those are like the choices that I would want you to have most of the time. But then also you have to enjoy your life and have a Pop-Tart or
we start saying
performy
like instead of healthy.
Performy.
I'm eating performy.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like, I think again, don't listen to the latest news. It's just what works for you.
Yeah, definitely.
I know what works for me. I'm gonna go
Chick-fil-A.
show my love for nutrition and CrossFit by spending money at CrossFit's first title sponsor as soon as we're done here. Y'all know what it was? CrossFit Games' first title sponsor?
Oh, no.
Was
Oh,
it?
man, that's so far.
So who have we had? Think of the big ones. Progenics maybe back in the day? Nope, not that. Before Progenics, come on. Panda Express, that's right.
Really?
Yeah, you don't remember Panda Express out there? It was like 2010 or 11.
No.
Where is Panda Express?
There's one down the way.
Brandon wants to
West
go
Side
with
Parkway.
you.
You coming?
I like Panda Express. Yeah, that's good. That actually brings up my last question. This is another question I get from athletes all the time.
Honey chicken.
The orange chicken is the best, I think.
No,
It's really
Beijing beef is low key legit.
good. That is pretty good too. Yeah, I agree. You're getting me off topic, Chris.
Okay.
Why are you doing this?
I'm hungry.
we got another podcast to go.
Wrap it up.
For those that are traveling, and I have quite a few that have traveling jobs. So they're not able to perfectly make their stuff on Sundays and plan it out throughout the week. How do you balance getting the right things in when they are going to Panda Express a couple times a week or going down the road to Chipotle or whatever else? Like, what are you telling those athletes?
I mean, Chipotle is good.
Yeah.
People ate Chipotle. That would be awesome. You
Actually, you want to deal with that service?
Yeah, Chipotle service is 2 out of 10.
I mean, I guess if you order online, but then you can't control how much double chicken you get.
You order online, you can get no proper
I mean, usually I give people Subway's good, certain
so
restaurant
you'll give them some
choices.
suggestions.
Yeah, and even, I mean, Chick-fil-A has some good options too. People kind of get
that bagel
nervous
and chicken
about
sandwich in the
Chick-fil-A.
morning.
Yeah, so I just give them some choices. But then I do have some people who will meal prep everything, and you can buy those bags, and he makes his meals and takes it with him. But yeah, I think it's just, again, what works for the client and what is good for their schedule.
And I think that's the nice part about when you work one-on-one with us, we help you go through each week and figuring that out. So maybe we try one thing. Okay, what worked well, what didn't? Can we do that again, but maybe a little bit better, or do we need to change something? So not like you have to work with us forever to figure those things out, but put the time in and figure those things out and pick our brains apart about, and let's work together to make it easy for you.
So where can people find you wonderful ladies?
Oh, well, we're on Instagram.
Yes, nutrition.ttt.
Yeah, we have a cool little January series that we're doing that is not a New Year's challenge. It's how can you just build sustainable habits for forever, because this is the time of year when everybody does challenges, and we're not
Instead
about
of the challenge that you quit halfway through.
Yeah,
exactly.
So check that out. That's probably where we post most of our stuff on there. And
every Friday we have a new topic for this month, which is fun.
You should call it 30-minute sustainable habits. That's how you get people to buy in. Only going to be 30 minutes.
We need you as our slogan
7-minute
person.
Sustainable habits next year.
And if somebody wants to reach out about nutrition coaching or just to have a consult with you, can they go to trainingthink.com?
Yeah, it's on the website, and then little nutrition. Okay. Click on it.
Awesome.
Yep.
So do that, folks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Panda Express time.